They didn't even haggle. A number was spoken over the low hum of the underground auction, a pen scratched, and I went from person to property with the efficiency of a receipt printing. Concrete sweated under the heat lamps, iron and damp made the air taste like I'd licked a battery. Somewhere behind me, a pipe ticked. Somewhere ahead, money moved like weather. No one looked at my face. That was the part that felt like theater. How people learn to glide their eyes past a human body the second it comes with paperwork. I stood still because standing still made them nervous. I smiled because smiling made them wonder what they'd actually bought. I hoped they at least paid for delivery. The handler, gloves, clipboard, breath that smelled faintly of mint and nerves, touched my elbow. "This way," he said, not unkind, like a flight attendant guiding turbulence. The crowd parted just enough. I caught a reflection in a leaking window. Ash-brown hair a little too long, pale gray eyes, ink fanning under skin like wings. The scar on my lip tilted my mouth into a permanent, almost laugh. My grandmother used to call that a blessing and a curse. It made liars underestimate me. It made honest men suspicious. We didn't take stairs. Stairs were for exits. We took a corridor that bent twice and pretended to be private. At the end, a door opened to the kind of car that makes silence part of its brand. Leather, blacker than the hallway. The handler's hand hovered at my back, and I stepped in myself so he could believe he'd chosen it. The door sealed with a hush. The city was a scatter of cheap jewels outside the tinted glass, and inside the air smelled like the absence of other people. I tested the seat, supple enough to make a point. My wrists itched where old cuffs had left ghosts. I rubbed them with my thumb, casual, like I was bored. "You'll be comfortable," someone in the front said. The voice was calm, professional, driver or bodyguard or both. I didn't lean forward to find out. Power doesn't like it when you go looking at its face without permission. "Great," I said. I love comfort. Goes with captivity, like wine with steak. Kind that doesn't argue because it doesn't have to. I'd been traded for numbers I would never see and promises I wouldn't believe. My pack had called it survival. We said that word through clenched teeth a lot, the vowels squeezing out like blood from a cut. They had debts. I had skills. I was an omega with a stubborn spine and a reputation for drawing pain into ink and leaving it there. Apparently, somebody with a bigger map decided that made me a bargaining chip. I let my head fall back and watched the city tilt. Neon smeared across the glass like bruises healing. Between one breath and the next, the hum of the tires braided with my pulse, and the motion pulled my eyelids down. It wasn't sleep. It was the kind of blackout your body gives you for free when it thinks you'll be more trouble awake. When I came back, the air had changed. Leather again, but richer, less mint, more bergamot. The sound of the city was gone, replaced by the distant hiss of climate, control, and the faintest click of something expensive settling on marble. I opened my eyes to glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows cut a perfect frame of the skyline, the buildings stacked like cool teeth around a black river of road. The room was a study in immaculate control, pale stone, dark wood, lines so clean I could cut my finger on them. A long table of smoked glass held a single object in the center. A collar, black leather, understated. The tag was silver, the kind that would photograph as platinum. An engraving gleamed like a smile, LS. I propped myself on my elbows. Every muscle felt accounted for. My mouth tasted like sleep and metal. My tongue tasted like a joke I hadn't told yet. The man at the window didn't turn when I moved. He didn't need to. I felt him the way you feel a storm before it breaks. Pressure behind the eyes, a line of ozone down the spine. He had his sleeves rolled to the forearms, revealing tendons and veins that looked like they'd been drawn with a ruler. Dark hair, cut clean. A hint of silver at the temples that said he didn't chase time, and time didn't dare chase him back. When he did turn, the city lit his face in planes, strong nose and easy mouth, eyes the color of old whiskey when sunlight burns through it. He filed me in a glance. Not cruel, not warm, accounting. Stand if you can, he said. The voice was low. Not the growl people pretend alphas have when they want to scare you. This one made you listen because it assumed you would. I'm not broken, I said, and swung my legs off the couch. The couch approved. My head found the gravity of the room and accepted it. Yet. Good. He looked at the collar, then at me. Wear it. You always open with jewelry? Most men buy dinner first. If you run, he said, as if I hadn't spoken, I'll find you. If you fight, I'll win. Wear it, or don't. The outcome is the same. I walked to the table. The collar was better made than some friendships I'd had. I traced the stitching with a fingertip, admiring the craft. Gray eyes, my grandmother's, looked back at me in the glass. What if I have a nickel allergy? I said. The corner of his mouth tugged, almost a smile, almost a warning. You don't. So we've met. We haven't, he said. But I've done my homework, Jude. Hearing my name in that voice did something I refused to classify. I clicked my tongue against my teeth and kept my body bored. And you are? Leo Salvatore. He didn't add the titles. He didn't have to. The room did it for him. This is my building. Nice building, I said. Shame about the decor. I gestured at the collar like I was pointing out a dead plant. His gaze slid to it, then back to me, measuring again. He moved the way people move when space moves out of their way for them. Wear it, he repeated, softer, not kinder. Softer, like a blade that didn't need to announce itself. I tilted my head. You sure you won't be the one who gets caught first? It wasn't bravado. Bravado is loud. This was quieter, the kind of humor you sharpen instead of raise. It hit him like I wanted, not in the pride, but in the curiosity. His eyes warmed a fraction, and the city behind him seemed to lean closer to listen. Everyone breaks, Jude, Leo said. He said my name, like it belonged in the mouth of someone who hadn't starved for it. It's just a matter of when. Maybe, I said. But some people cut back. A beat stretched between us. Whole buildings could have been built on that beat. He was an alpha in the biological sense. The air around him tuned to a frequency that made your instincts check their mirrors. Mine saw the flashing lights and stayed in my lane anyway. The scent under his cologne was heat and cedar and something metallic, like a storm climbing a fire escape. My own scent doesn't announce itself unless I let it. I didn't. He stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, close enough to make the glass table consider its options. You'll eat, he said. You'll rest. Tomorrow, I have work for you. Let me guess, I said. You want a tattoo? His eyes cut to my hands, my arms, the art that lived there, a tangle of thorns growing into wings, a line of script in a language only 2 people in this city could read, a small lion that wasn't his. That one I'd done the night my pack voted. The ink still damp when hands went up that weren't mine. I do, he said, but not tonight. I picked up the collar. It was heavier than it looked. The tag chimed a single, opinionated note against the table when I set it down again. You like choices, I said, offering what you already decided. I like clarity. He turned back to the window, his reflection doubling him into a man and a rumor. Wear it or leave it on the table. Test the perimeter if you need to. I won't repeat myself. You just did. He didn't laugh. He did something quieter in his throat that made me want to win an argument I hadn't heard yet. We stood there, the city breathing slow around us. I could have asked about the terms, about the debt that had my name stapled to it, about the brother whose shadow lived in the back of my mouth whenever I swallowed. Instead, I catalogued the shape of this new cage, exits, cameras, lines, of sight, the distance from table to door to elevator to night. The marble looked cold enough to cool a fever. The glass looked expensive enough to break only once. Leo glanced at the collar a final time, then at me. His gaze was steady, not predatory. He wasn't thinking about hunger. He was thinking about order. He headed for the hallway. "There are clothes in the bedroom," he said, as if this too were part of the contract I hadn't signed. "Eat. Rest." "Bossy," I said. "Effective," he answered, and was gone. The room inhaled after him. I let my shoulders drop a fraction and laughed under my breath at the ceiling because there was nobody else to hear it. On the table, the collar lay like punctuation at the end of a sentence he thought he'd written. "He thinks he'll break me." I slid the tag with one finger and watched the engraved letters catch the city's light like teeth. "I think he'll enjoy trying." The penthouse was too clean. Not just tidy, surgical. It looked like a place where emotions came to die quietly, swept into chrome corners before they could leave fingerprints. Every surface gleamed. Every chair had geometry instead of personality. Even the air smelled disinfected. I'd been here 3 days, maybe 4. Time didn't move normally when your jailer kept the clocks digital and silent. The collar still lay on the table. I'd moved it once, just to see if the universe would explode. It didn't. The mornings were the same, quiet, expensive, pretending to be peace. The city murmured somewhere below, alive and imperfect. I kept the windows open, let the noise in like oxygen. Leo didn't comment, though I saw the faintest twitch in his jaw when the wind carried the sound of sirens. He liked control. I liked noise. We were doomed, so I broke things in the only way I could. I didn't come when he called through the intercom. I played music at a volume that made the marble vibrate, old punk tracks, recorded in someone's basement. I wore nothing from the wardrobe he'd stocked, choosing my own clothes from the duffel. They hadn't bothered to search. Ripped jeans, sleeveless tee, ink on full display. The first morning, a maid left breakfast on the table and vanished before I could ask her name. Eggs, toast, fruit, all neatly arranged like a corporate photo shoot. I ignored it and made coffee that tasted like rebellion and burnt beans. Leo didn't appear until noon. He walked in like he owned silence and was irritated someone else was leasing it. "Good morning," he said. "It was," I replied. "Then you spoke." His eyes flicked toward the speaker system where the music still thumped. He didn't ask me to turn it down. Instead, he walked to the table, set down a file folder, and waited. He did that a lot. Waited like gravity does. "You're ignoring the house rules." "There were rules?" He nodded toward the collar still sitting on the glass. "You're ignoring that too." "Oh, that. I thought it was modern art. Symbolic, you know. Ownership as decor." His mouth curved, the faintest ghost of amusement. "You provoke on purpose." "I explore boundaries." He crossed his arms. "And what have you concluded?" "That yours are flexible," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "Until someone touches your pride." Silence thickened. I could feel the city's heartbeat through the glass floor-to-ceiling windows, 1,000 meters below. For a second, I wondered if I'd pushed too far, but then I saw it. A spark, hidden behind his calm interest. "Noted," he said finally. "Eat. Already did." "With what? Arrogance?" "It's high in protein." His sigh was a quiet victory. For me. He didn't raise his voice, didn't move closer, just studied me like I was a long-term investment. "You tattoo," he said at last. "Show me." I blinked. "Show you what, exactly?" "Your work." There was no curiosity in his tone, only calculation, like he was testing how far I'd let him look. I pushed up my sleeve anyway. Ink spread from my wrist to my elbow, a wolf's head dissolving into smoke, teeth bared but fading. "Self-portrait?" he asked. I smiled. "Family photo." He studied it for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and placed a card on the table. It bore his family crest, an old Italian lion in relief, sharp enough to catch the light. "Tomorrow," he said, You'll make me one. Of what? He met my eyes. Surprise me. That was the thing about Leo. Every command came wrapped as an invitation, but the strings were steel underneath. After he left, I stared at the card for a long time. My fingers itched, the artist in me whispering ideas, claws, fangs, fire. Maybe a lion tangled in barbed wire. Maybe a collar-turned crown. The music faded as the sun shifted. I walked to the window and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. Below, the city churned, streets messy and loud, people running toward something or away. From up here, it looked almost peaceful. From down there, I'd been one of them. The penthouse reflected me back like an accusation, clean, trapped, pretending to be fine. I let the silence stretch, tried to measure its weight. Maybe he wanted obedience. Maybe he wanted to see how long I could stay human without biting. I could have screamed. I could have begged. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee and turned the music back on. Let him hear it. Let him listen to what freedom sounds like. The next morning, when the maid came again, I left a note on the tray. Tell your boss I'm out of ink. Might have to use blood next time. She didn't reply, but the coffee was stronger the next day. Someone was listening. At night, I dreamt of tattoo guns humming like bees, of lines of ink that turned into fences, of hands too steady to belong to mine. When I woke, the city was still there, ugly and beautiful and alive. I looked around the pristine room, at the collar still glinting under the first sunlight, at the quiet power that slept somewhere beyond the wall, and thought, a cage isn't scary if you know how to paint on the walls. Leo's office smelled like ink and power. The kind of power that didn't shout, just was. Woven into the grain of the mahogany desk, humming through the floorboards, pulsing faintly in the silence. Night pressed against the glass walls, city lights burning like distant stars. The skyline reflected back at us. Two ghosts locked in a frame, one sitting, one standing, both pretending control wasn't the drug we'd been mainlining for days. He had cleared the desk. The usual files, the gun, the whiskey, all gone. In their place, a small sterilized tray, the tattoo gun, and the hum of anticipation thick as smoke. You're early, I said, unpacking the needles. Most clients like to drink first. I don't drink before pain, he replied, shrugging off his jacket. It dulls the edges. Edges are kind of the point. His eyes flicked up. Exactly. He rolled his sleeve to the elbow. The movement was unhurried, deliberate, the cotton folding back to reveal forearms carved from years of order and violence. There was a scar near his wrist. Thin, faded, surgical. I wondered who'd put it there and if they were still alive. Where? I asked. He tapped the inside of his wrist. Close to the pulse. I raised a brow. Symbolic or just dramatic? Both, he said, and didn't smile. I prepped the ink. Black with a trace of gold shimmer, subtle enough to catch light but not attention. My hands moved by instinct, muscle memory older than my pride. When the needle buzzed to life, the sound filled the room like a wasp trapped behind glass. Leo didn't flinch when the first line broke his skin. The machine vibrated softly in my grip, the scent of sterilized alcohol blending with faint undertones of his cologne, bergamot, smoke, and something darker beneath. My body knew before my brain admitted it. This was a dangerous kind of intimacy. He watched me. Not the tattoo. Me. His gaze traced my face like a fingerprint, memorizing every flicker. You're good, he said. I'm not trying to impress you. Then it's working. I didn't look up. You talk to all your acquisitions this way? Only the interesting ones. The buzz filled the pause between us. The design began to take shape. A lion's head, minimal lines that hinted more than they revealed, eyes sharp, mouth half open. It wasn't roaring. It didn't need to. Leo's voice was quiet, but it carried. You understand what this is? A job? A mark? Everything's a mark if you press hard enough. He tilted his head, eyes following the needle's movement. You're leaving one. You know that. Funny, I said, letting the ink bleed into skin. I was just thinking the same thing. You think you can mark me? I already did. That earned a real smile, small, predatory, and almost beautiful. You're bold. I'm bored. Liar. My hand paused for a fraction of a second. Just a fraction, but he noticed. Of course he did. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice until it brushed my skin like breath. Your pulse jumped. Maybe it's the fumes. He exhaled, and for a moment the air between us thickened, dense with something that wasn't just pheromones. It was challenge, recognition. A low, unspoken, I see you. The needle moved again, tracing the lion's jawline. His skin was hot under my glove, alive, the kind of heat that gets under yours if you stay too close too long. My chest tightened with something I refused to name. You ever do this for anyone else? He asked. Define this. The power exchange. I met his gaze. You're the one sitting still. The hum deepened, a rhythm between our breathing, the scent of iron and ink mixed with his warmth, until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. For a second, I let myself forget the contract, the collar, the invisible chains. It was just skin and art, the simplest kind of truth. Creation through controlled pain. He didn't speak again until the gun went quiet. The last line sealed the lion's eye, catching the reflection of the city's glow. I wiped the ink gently, the cloth dragging over his pulse. He didn't pull away. Done, I said. He turned his wrist, studying it. The lion looked alive under the glassy sheen of ointment, golden shimmer catching like embers. It suits you, I said. Something about ego and apex predators. He flexed his hand, testing the stretch. Strange, he murmured. Feels like you marked me. Guess I did. His eyes lifted, sharp, amused. I'll allow it. Temporarily, I smirked. You say that like you have a choice. He stood, towering over me, but not in a way that made me want to step back. He radiated calm menace, the kind that makes lesser people babble. I just wiped my gloves off and met his stare. The silence returned. Thick, heavy, a slow heartbeat between us. He finally spoke. You've got ink on your cheek. I touched it automatically and left a black smear across my skin. Occupational hazard. He reached out, thumb brushing my jaw, slow enough to ask permission without words. His skin was warm. The touch lasted a heartbeat, maybe two. Then he dropped his hand and walked to the window. Good work, he said. Always. As he looked out at the city, I caught our reflection in the glass. His lion gleamed faintly, proud and deliberate. On my own arm, the lamplight hit a streak of ink that wasn't quite dry, leaving a pale raised line, thin, white, almost like a scar. Our marks, mirrored, his by request, mine by accident. I packed up the tools, careful with the silence. He didn't look back, but I felt the awareness linger, like the echo of a name you almost said aloud. When I turned to leave, he spoke one last time. Tomorrow, Leo said, voice soft but absolute. You'll stay. I didn't answer, because for the first time since I'd been sold, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to leave. The sound hit first. Dull, rhythmic thuds against leather. A punch. A block. A command. It echoed through the corridor like a heartbeat trying too hard. The training hall sat beneath the penthouse, all metal and mirrors and sweat. It smelled of effort, of men who believed discipline could make them untouchable. The lighting was low, almost kind, but nothing about what I saw was. Leo moved like precision dressed in flesh. No hesitation, no wasted energy. His strikes landed with the same quiet authority he used to give orders upstairs. Every motion was a sentence, every impact, a lesson. The others, his men or his wolves depending on how you looked at them, watched him with that particular silence reserved for gods and tyrants. I stood in the doorway, invisible in theory but not in fact. His eyes found me halfway through a takedown. A flicker, just that, and then his opponent hit the mat with the sound of air leaving a body too slow to beg. Leo offered the man a hand up. Again, he didn't need to raise his voice. Command came naturally to him, like scent. When the session ended, his men scattered fast, towels and excuses in hand. The room shrank to the sound of my heartbeat and the faint hum of the overhead lights. "You watch like a critic," Leo said without turning. "I was trying to see if you preferred violence to conversation," I said. "I prefer efficiency. That's one way to spell fear." He turned then, slow, deliberate, a lion who didn't need to roar to remind you what he was. "Fear? You call this discipline," I said, stepping further into the room, the soles of my boots whispering against the mat. "But they don't move because they respect you. They move because you terrify them. Fear keeps people alive. Fear keeps them obedient," I shot back. Alive and hollow aren't the same thing. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but something sharper. "You think you know the difference?" "I live it," I said. That did it. He started walking toward me, not fast, not threateningly, just inevitably, each step a reminder that space was a courtesy he could revoke any time. "You're brave," he said. "No," I replied, "just bad at survival instincts." He stopped close enough for me to feel the heat rolling off his skin. The scent of sweat and soap hit first, then the deeper undertone of him, iron, cedar, and something wild, restrained. My pulse betrayed me, but I didn't back down. His hand brushed my jaw, thumb tracing the line of my throat like punctuation. "You're trembling. Observation skills on point," I said. "Are you afraid? Of what?" "Me," I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Disappointment, maybe. Blood? Never." He tilted his head. "So, if you want to bite," I interrupted, my voice low enough to hum between us, "then bite. But I'll bite back." The air changed, heavy, charged, the kind of silence that hums under your skin, that dares you to move. His eyes locked on mine. For a heartbeat, instinct overruled logic. The alpha in him leaned forward, and the part of me that had survived every kind of cage leaned right back. Neither of us moved first. We just stood there, the line between defiance and something darker thinning by the second. His breath brushed my cheek. Mine caught halfway to laughter. Then, abruptly, he stepped back. The space between us reappeared like a slap. The echo of a small metallic clink hit the floor. I looked down. The collar had slipped from his hand. It rolled once, twice, before stopping near my boot. Neither of us spoke. The hum of the lights filled in what we didn't say. He looked at the collar for a long time, then at me. The faintest muscle in his jaw moved. "You shouldn't play games you can't win," he said. "I wasn't playing," I answered. "I was teaching." His gaze sharpened, unreadable, maybe even impressed. "Teaching what?" "That even lions bleed if you cut deep enough." Something flickered in his eyes, something almost human. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. No parting words this time, just the rhythm of his steps fading into the hall. I exhaled slowly, the air burning on its way out. My knees felt like glass, but I didn't let them bend. Instead, I crouched, picked up the collar, and spun it once around my finger. The silver tag caught the light, glinting like a smirk. When I finally spoke, the room was empty, but listening. "Looks like someone lost tonight," I said softly. "Just not sure who." The collar's weight settled in my palm. Neither heavy nor light, just real. A reminder of the game we both kept pretending wasn't one. I dropped it back on the mat, right where he'd stood, and walked out. Behind me, the faint scent of blood and metal lingered in the air, clean, electric, almost sweet. Rain slid down the glass in thin, tired veins. The city outside looked like it was bleeding neon, reds and blues leaking into each other, washing the night in colors too loud for how quiet it felt inside. I sat on the floor beside the window, watching my reflection in the dark glass. My own face stared back, thinner than I remembered, eyes too sharp. The collar glinted faintly on the table a few feet away, mocking me with its patience. I'd stopped sleeping days ago, or maybe just forgot how. The penthouse at night was too still. No footsteps, no voices, only the low hum of electricity and the sound of the storm pressing against the walls. It made the air heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. And it did. It started small, just me wandering into Leo's study while the building slept. The door wasn't locked. Maybe that was trust. Maybe arrogance. The room smelled like leather and ink and faint coffee. His scent clinging to everything, subtle but everywhere. Papers stacked neatly on the desk, edges perfectly aligned. I didn't plan to touch anything. I just wanted to breathe in the space he kept secret. Then I saw it. A thin folder, opened by mistake. A photograph peeking out. I knew that face before my fingers even brushed the paper. My brother, alive. You know how the world goes quiet in explosion? That's what it felt like. My heartbeat vanishing into a ringing that filled my head until I couldn't hear my own breath. His hair was shorter, his eyes bruised, but it was him. There was a logo on the wall behind him, one I recognized, a syndicate Leo had fought with for years. The paper slipped from my hand. For a second, all I could think was, he lied. The storm cracked outside like glass shattering across the sky, and something inside me followed. I turned, caught sight of myself in the wall mirror. My hands were trembling. My throat burned. The reflection looked wrong, like someone else wearing my anger. Where is he? I whispered, and the reflection didn't answer. The next thing I knew, the mirror broke. My hands still stung from the impact, blood dripping from my knuckles. The spiderweb of cracks split my face into 7 versions of the same mistake. The collar sat on the dresser, gleaming under the lamplight. I grabbed it, yanked it around my neck, then clawed at the clasp until the leather cut into my fingers. It didn't budge. The rage blurred into panic. I tore at it harder, until the pain made everything go sharp again. The door burst open, 2 guards first. Leo's shadows, faceless in black. One reached for me. I didn't think, just moved. My elbow met his jaw, a twist, a kick. The other grabbed my wrist. I slammed the broken glass against his forearm. He swore and let go. Then Leo's voice. Enough. He didn't shout, didn't need to. The guards froze. I didn't. I lunged for the exit, but his hand caught my arm mid-stride. 1 second, I was moving. The next, the world stopped. Let go. He didn't. He pulled me back, pinning me against the wall, not harshly, just firmly enough that escape wasn't an option. His grip was steady, unshaken, even as blood from my hand smeared across his shirt. What did you see? My brother, I spat. His photo. In your files. Something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt, not surprise. Recognition. You're holding him, aren't you? No. His voice was quiet, flat. But I know who is. The words hit harder than a punch. My chest tightened. You knew. Yes, you. I choked on it, anger burning like acid. You knew and said nothing? It wasn't time. Not time? I slammed my fist against his chest, once, twice, until the ache drowned the scream building in my throat. He's out there, hurt, maybe dead. And you waited? He caught my wrist before I could strike again, not in defense, but restraint. They're using him to get to me, he said. If I'd moved too soon, you'd both be dead. The fight drained out of me, fast and cold. The room spun once, the lights smearing into streaks of gold. I slid down the wall, the broken glass crunching under my palms. Why tell me now? Because you found out, he said simply, then crouched beside me. And because it's time. I laughed, but it broke halfway through. You keep deciding what time is. He looked at me for a long moment, really looked, not as property, not as trouble, just looked. You want him back, he said. So do I. I stared at the cracks on the floor. Why help me? He exhaled, leaning back on his heels, because it's too late for you to run, and because I don't like debts. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was heavy with something that could have been truth. Blood dripped from my knuckles, painting little red constellations across the marble. Leo reached for a towel from the table, pressed it against my hand. His touch was careful, almost hesitant. We sat there, two men, one bleeding, one unmarked, on a floor littered with glass and unspoken things. Outside, thunder rolled again. I finally said, "He's all I have left." Leo's voice dropped low. "Then we'll get him back." He didn't promise how. He didn't have to. When he pulled his hand away, both of us were smeared with the same blood. The mirror on the wall was ruined, our reflections scattered into 1,000 pieces. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which one of us looked more broken. The club was named the Low like it was proud of its altitude. No windows, just bass. Sound lived down here like an animal, thudding against rib cages, curling around ankles. Neon dripped from the ceiling in thin strips. Smoke moved in sheets that smelled like sweet chemicals and old threats. Every table had shadows. Every shadow had a price. Leo didn't announce himself. The room did it for him. Heads turned the way flowers follow light. Slow, involuntary. People made space without looking like they were making space. He wore dark, no tie, coat open, the bandage from last night hidden under immaculate cuffs. The mark I'd put on his wrist sat out of sight, but somehow I felt it anyway, like a wire stretched between us under the noise. "Stay close," he said, without touching me. "Because you're worried?" I asked. "Because they are them," I said, and swept a look across the crowd, men in suits that cost more than my childhood, women with knives disguised as jewelry, lieutenants who smelled like stress and cologne. "You mean your admirers?" "Admirers," he repeated, dry enough to be a desert. "If you feel teeth, those are not kisses." We cut through the room. Eyes followed, some curious, some calculating, some openly hostile. The Low was neutral ground the way a minefield is scenic. You could meet your enemies here, but only because everyone agreed not to ruin the carpet. The table was already set, a semicircle of men who'd built their empires on money and rumor. At the center, Vico Costa, Leo's longest-standing rival, leaned back like a throne had sprouted. Under him, white hair slicked with something expensive, eyes too pale to be kind. "Salvatore," Vico said, voice smooth as a hangman's rope. "I thought you'd send a messenger. Or a bullet." "Both are unreliable," Leo said, taking the seat without asking. He didn't glance at me, but the chair to his right was empty. I took it like that had been the plan all along. "And you brought—" Vico let the sentence dangle like bait. "Work," Leo said. I didn't react. Let them guess if I was a bodyguard, a toy, a weapon. Let them be wrong. A scarred man on Vico's left cleared his throat. "We heard the rumors. The Omega with the bite. The one you keep upstairs." I smiled, small and serrated. "You listen to rumors? Cute." Vico's gaze stuck to me a beat too long. "Some of us listen for a living, and some of us listen because they're scared to talk first," I said. "Jude," Leo warned, without looking at me. "What?" I said, innocent as fire. Vico laughed, a single clap of sound. "You've changed your type, Salvatore. I remember the quiet ones." "People remember what's convenient," Leo said. "Let's discuss the inconvenient." Papers emerged. Maps, names, timetables. My brother's face never touched the table. But he was there, under everything, like a heartbeat threaded through the base. The syndicate holding him had muscle and money and the ugly confidence of people who'd never paid full price for anything. "We need a passage," Leo said. "You control the docks for 48 hours. We move a crate. It doesn't exist." Vico's fingers tapped the table. "And why would I do that?" "Because you like balance," Leo said, as if discussing the weather. "And they've forgotten how to fear it." "Or," Vico said, smiling, "because I like watching you owe me." Leo didn't blink. "You won't collect." Vico murmured. "You're still charming. It's almost nostalgic." He looked at me again. "And insurance?" "Me," I said, before Leo could choose a prettier word. "You get what you want. We walk out clean. You try a trick, you bleed. Simple math." The scarred man chuckled. "He talks like you." "He bites harder," I said, still smiling. Negotiations spun their web. Numbers got translated into favors, favors into leverage, leverage into roots that vanished on paper. At some point, a woman in a silver dress brought drinks we didn't touch. The base staggered. The smoke learned new shapes. I watched Leo work, how he refused to fill silence, how he let other men talk themselves into smaller versions of themselves. He never raised his voice. He never needed to. He collected yes, the way oceans collect rivers, inevitably. And still, the room treated him like two things at once, king and executioner. They laughed when he wanted, paused when he breathed, sat straighter when he merely reached for a pen. Half reverence, half recoil. You don't worship lions because you like their table manners. The deal landed with the soft weight of inevitability. Vico slid the last paper back, leaned in. 48 hours, he said. "No more." "Enough," Leo said, standing. It wasn't gratitude. It was arithmetic. Vico stood too. He looked at me like he was choosing a dagger. "You sure about your math, Omega?" "I double-check it with a knife," I said. He grinned. "I see why you keep him." He meant it to needle. It didn't land where he thought. We left through the same crowd that had watched us arrive. Eyes followed again, but they were different now. Sharper, angrier, respectful in the way people respect storms from under roofs. The car swallowed us whole. Leather and shadows. The world outside smearing into a watercolor of rain and neon. The driver pulled away without being told. The bass faded to a memory in my chest. For a minute, no one spoke. The quiet was almost gentle. "You didn't correct him," I said finally. "About what?" "Keep," I said. The word tasted like iron. "You let him say it." Leo's profile was all lines and night. "Words are cheap. Coming from a man who buys buildings with them." He didn't deny it. The ashtray held the faintest ghost of smoke. The leather smelled like restraint. The city looked less like a threat from here, and more like a promise you don't believe in yet. "You're not an alpha," I said, watching his reflection in the dark glass. "You're a commander." He turned his head. "Difference?" "People obey alphas," I said. "They trust commanders." The car kept moving. A traffic light washed him in red, then green. He didn't look away. "Then you've chosen trust," he said. So simply my chest tightened. I huffed a laugh that wasn't quite a laugh. "Don't get excited. I'm bad at it." He almost smiled. Almost. It changed his face more than any expression had a right to. Noted. The air shifted. Still taut, still wired, but warmer at the edges. Like a room after a fight, when no one's ready to say sorry. But someone opens a window. "You did well," he said after a beat. "At not stabbing your rival? I deserve a cookie. We'll negotiate that later. Are you flirting? Is it working?" I let my head fall back against the seat, eyes closing for one breath. "Ask me in 48 hours. Silence again, but not the dangerous kind. Outside, the rain softened. Inside, the tension settled into its usual place. Between us, not crushing, not gone. Waiting. My phone, one of his really, buzzed with a single-word message from an unlisted number that used to belong to someone dead. Confirmed. I didn't show him. I didn't have to. His fingers touched the lion on his wrist, and for a second, the pulse under my own skin matched it. We drove on, the city opening like a throat ahead of us, and for the first time the future didn't look like a wall. It looked like a door someone had remembered how to pick. The rain came down like it had a personal grudge against the roof. Each drop hit metal and sang a different note. Together they made a choir of bad omens. The abandoned warehouse crouched at the edge of the docks. Rusted ribs, broken windows, like missing teeth, the whole place smelling of wet iron, gun oil, and old regrets. 2 minutes, Leo said, voice clipped through the comm. No heroics. I only do artistic choices, I whispered back, pressing my shoulder to the wall. The concrete was cold enough to file my bones. We'd split. 2 teams, 3 angles. Vico's promised blind spot had opened like a mouth, a security camera looped, to yesterday's empty feed, a loading bay door that sighed when it lifted. 48 hours of neutral docks, half a miracle, half a trap. I'd take either. I checked my kit. Gloves, tourniquet, gauze, the folding knife I'd carried since a life with cheaper problems. Leo checked me with his eyes when I wasn't looking. Old habit, new ache. On my count, he said. 3, 2. The door rose. We slid inside on the last beat. Lights off, muzzles low. The warehouse swallowed us, long aisles of crate shapes under tarps, catwalks above like dead veins. Somewhere water dripped with stubborn precision. Somewhere else, a rat decided we weren't the worst thing it had seen this week. I felt him before I saw him. Blood recognizes gravity. Bond recognizes heat. Left, I breathed, and Leo moved with me, not ahead, not behind, with. The men behind us fanned out. Morales on the catwalk, Pike hugging the shadows, Rourke, Leo's oldest, watching our flank with a patience that could have been faith. We reached a compartmented office. Glass walls grime-frosted, a door crooked on its hinge. I smelled it first, antiseptic, failing to cover fear. Then the outline on a cot. My brother, small, smaller than memory, hair buzzed down, IV taped to a trembling arm. His eyes were half moons under bruises, his mouth cracked open like a plea that got lost. For a second, the world unspooled. I wanted to sprint, to break, to bargain with every god I'd ever ignored. Leo's hand landed on my shoulder. Not a stop, a careful, clear it first, he said, almost gentle. Then, louder, positions. Morales's whisper crackled. East catwalk clear. Pike. Loading bay, quiet. Rourke. Rear. Gunfire carved his voice in half. Down! Leo snapped. The first shots took the glass behind us, spraying the room with glittering shrapnel. I threw myself over the cot, covering my brother's body with mine, felt the sharp bite of a shard through my jacket. Leo moved like a shadow with teeth, pushing a filing cabinet over and turning it into something like cover. Rourke barked into static. Nothing. The silence was a confession. Inside job, I said, stomach turning to smoke. Later, Leo bit out. Now we live. Another burst. The hallway lit up with muzzle flashes. White, orange, white. I saw the shapes then. 3 on the right, 2 on the catwalk, 1 in the blind corner. Ours. Pike's silhouette stuttered in the strobe as he turned his gun the wrong way. My breath tried to become a scream. I pressed it into a growl instead. Pike. Leo's voice could have split stone. Pike flinched. 1 second too late. The second shot was Leo's. Pike spun and dropped, surprise still on his face like a last, stupid tattoo. I dragged the cot behind a steel cabinet, wheels squealing traitorously. Bullets chewed the doorframe where my head had just been. My brother made a sound like paper tearing. Hey, I said, choking on kindness. Hey, it's me. Don't go anywhere. Stupid joke. He didn't laugh. His pulse fluttered like a moth trapped in a jar. Morales took the catwalk shooter. One shot, clean. Another came from the far end, Leo answered. 2 rounds that sounded like decisions you don't regret until later. Noise built into a wall. The smell of gunpowder choked the air, sharp and burnt sweet. The rain kept time on the roof, steady as a metronome. I could taste the metal in my mouth, copper and fear. Then Rourke stepped out of the dark, limping, blood on his sleeve that wasn't his, eyes wrong. "Boss!" he shouted, pointing past us. Behind. Leo pivoted. The shot that should have taken his head took his shoulder instead, slamming him into the door. He grunted, staggered, then turned his pain into motion and put a bullet exactly where Rourke's heart should have been. Rourke looked down at the hole like it was a riddle, then fell in a way that didn't get up. Everything paused, then everything sped up. "Leo." I crawled to him, grabbing, pulling. Blood was already seeping hot and stubborn through his jacket, slicking my hands. He pushed me toward my brother with his good arm. "Get him out," he said, voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding like a metaphor," I snapped. "Shut up." He almost smiled. "Bossy." "Effective," I shot back, and ripped his sleeve open. The wound was high, messy, a graze with ambition. He'd live if we didn't get cute. "Morales," Leo barked, gritting it out. "Truck ready. 2 minutes," came the reply. We made our own cover with furniture that used to have a job. I slapped a pressure bandage onto Leo's shoulder. He hissed, but didn't flinch. With my other hand, I checked my brother's throat, found the ghost of a pulse, a thread of warmth that said now, not never. "Hey," I murmured, leaning close. "I'm here. You hear me?" His eyelids fluttered like he recognized my voice from another lifetime. "Good. Good. Move," Leo said, pushing onto his feet. He stood too fast and listed. I caught him with my body, surprised at how easily we fit into the problem. "Stay down," I ordered. He laughed like a cough. "Won't." We moved anyway, the 3 of us, plus Morales ghosting at our rear, his breathing steady like a metronome with a gun. We hit the corridor. Shadows lunged, I shoved back. Somebody's shoulder met my knife. Somebody's gun kissed the wall and screamed. At the loading bay, rain barged in like a 5th man. The truck's engine rumbled impatiently. Morales took the lead, clearing the ramp. I got my brother over the threshold with a strength I didn't know I had. Leo took a step behind me, then another, then stumbled. I turned and grabbed his collar, that collar, and hauled him forward. His weight crashed into me, and we went down in a tangle on the wet concrete, breath and curse colliding. "Jude," he started, but I was already there, already on my knees, pressing him flat with a palm to the sternum. "Stay," I said, and he did, shockingly obedient. The rain dotted his face, the warehouse lights turned him into chiaroscuro. He looked younger in pain, which felt like a cheat. I tore the bandage apart and leaned in, my hands moving without asking permission from the part of me that was scared. Blood slicked my fingers, hot as anger. I wrapped the gauze tight, anchored it with tape, pressed until his jaw unclenched. My mouth found his ear without my consent. "You said everyone breaks," I whispered, hands steady because they had to be. "But I think I glued you back together." His eyes, dazed, met mine. A slant of a grin cut through the pain. "You're very loud glue." "Shut up and breathe," I said, voice shaking like a bridge in wind. Behind us, Morales shouted something about doors and seconds. In front of us, the truck reeled closer. I hauled Leo onto his side, then up, then in, motion a prayer. He grunted once, twice, then caught his footing and used it like a weapon. We slid into the truck, the door slamming, the world shrinking to diesel and adrenaline. For a moment, nobody spoke. My brother lay between us on the floor, pale and impossible, a line of life vibrating under his skin. Leo's blood patterned the truck bed like a map to somewhere I didn't want to go. Morales banged on the cab. The engine answered. lurching us into a future that might hold. I sat back on the cold metal and laughed, an ugly, grateful sound that hacked itself in half. Leo watched me from the wall, breath ragged, pupils blown wide. "You good?" he asked, because he's that kind of contradiction. "No," I said. "Ask me when he wakes up." Leo's gaze dropped to my hands. We were both covered in red. His lion tattoo flashed gold under the jerking light. I didn't reach for it. I didn't have to. The pulse under it matched mine. Outside, the rain kept time. Inside, the three of us were stitched together with things you can't put in a report. Fear, fury, relief that hurt to hold. We'd won. Badly. Barely. The warehouse disappeared into the rear view like a bad habit you intend to break, and no you won't. I leaned my head back, closed my eyes, and let the truck carry us forward. The taste of gunpowder and promise still bittersweet on my tongue. Morning came too quietly. The city outside moved like nothing had happened. Cars in their lanes, sunlight cutting, through the glass, people drinking coffee without blood under their nails. The penthouse looked almost peaceful again, as if the walls had never heard gunfire echo across them. The air smelled clean. Too clean. My brother was safe, sleeping 2 floors below under the care of one of Leo's doctors, breathing, healing, alive, the kind of miracle you don't say out loud in case the universe reconsiders. I'd gone to check on him before dawn, stood there until the monitor's rhythm stopped sounding like a countdown. When I came back upstairs, the collar was waiting for me. It sat on the table, polished, whole. The silver tag gleamed in the sun like it had never known dirt or blood, or what it meant. It was just an object again. Leather, metal, memory. Leo stood by the window, as he always did. Shirt sleeves rolled, hair a little messier than usual, the bandage on his shoulder peeking through the fabric. The morning light caught him at an angle that made him look almost human. "You're leaving," he said, not as a question. "Yeah." My voice didn't sound like mine. Hoarse, quiet. "You're not going to stop me?" His eyes didn't move from the skyline. "Why would I?" "Because that's what you do." He turned then, slow, deliberate. His face was unreadable, but his voice wasn't sharp anymore. "No, that's what I used to do." I didn't know how to answer that. The silence between us wasn't heavy this time. Just full. The kind that fills a room when 2 people finally stop lying, even in the small ways. I moved toward the door. My bag was already packed. Clothes, tools, fake IDs, a burner phone. The sound of the zipper had felt like the last page of something I wasn't sure I wanted to finish. Leo didn't follow. Didn't say my name. When I reached the door, I stopped. Outside, sunlight flickered against the marble floor, too bright to look at. My hand hovered over the handle. It would have been easier to leave. To pretend it had been a transaction. Debt for debt, blood for blood. That we'd both walk away cleaner, emptier, balanced. But the collar still sat there. And I still couldn't pretend. I turned around. Leo watched me in silence, brow furrowed slightly like he already knew. I crossed the room, each step louder than it should have been. The collar caught the light as I picked it up, cold, smooth, deceptively light. I turned it in my hands, feeling the faint scratch I'd left near the clasp weeks ago. My mark. He took a step forward, almost cautious. Jude. I didn't let him finish. I fastened the collar around my neck. It clicked softly, the sound small and absolute. Leo's jaw tightened. "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "That's the point." For a heartbeat, neither of us breathed. His gaze moved from the collar to my face, searching for something. Anger, surrender, regret. I didn't give him any of it, just truth. "You told me once that everyone breaks," I said. "Maybe you were right. But maybe breaking isn't the worst thing." He took another step closer. Close enough that I could smell the faint trace of smoke on his skin, the warmth of him crowding out the sterile air of the room. "And now?" he asked quietly. "Now," I said, meeting his eyes. "We both wear chains. But at least they're ours." He didn't answer right away. His eyes softened, barely, but enough. Then, finally, the smallest curve of a smile. Not his usual smirk, not the one that came with control or challenge. This one was quiet, tired, real. I reached up, brushing my fingers over the collar's edge. "You know," I murmured, "for someone who thinks he owns everything, you're terrible at keeping what matters." "Maybe I never tried," he said. "Until now." The words landed somewhere I didn't want to name. I looked past him at the city, at the sun climbing up the steel towers like it was trying to get higher than itself. The world looked almost new. "You're still bleeding," I said softly. He huffed a quiet laugh. "You too." We stood there a little too long, the distance between us no longer something either of us wanted to measure. Finally, I turned toward the window. The reflection caught both of us. Him in the sunlight, me in the shadow, and the silver line at my throat bridging the two. "Now what?" I asked. "Now," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "We start over." The collar warmed against my skin, the metal no longer feeling like a cage, but something else, something alive. And for the first time, I didn't think about running. I looked at him and smiled, faint but certain. Guess we're both not free anymore. He didn't deny it. And when I walked past him, sunlight broke across the room in shards of gold, scattering on the floor like 1,000 open doors. Some chains make you a prisoner, and some, if you choose them, become home.